is this thing on?
What is up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I have my December and January books for you. You are probably just gonna have to suffer through the sound of the heater because it's freaking cold. The winter weather hit pretty hard here. I'm actually gonna be working from home the next couple of days because it's gross outside. So I hope you guys are staying safe and warm. I think I have shown you guys this already, my new moleskin for the year. This is what I use for a reading journal. I set it up really simply. I'll show you guys like an example page. I've already prepped this page for my next read. I've got the date that I finish it, the rating that I'm gonna give it, the title, author, genre, page count, and format that I read it in. And then obviously I'll put all of my notes, any quotes that I like right here. So yeah, I'm gonna take you guys through what I read these last 2 months. Okay, so the first read of December was a little bit of a disappointing one. You Must Love Books by Shauna Robinson. I picked this up despite my better judgment. I am not typically the type of person to pick up like the rom-com, office romance type books, but because this one was about books, and the main character, Nora, works for a literary agency, I thought, something compelled me to pick it up. So basically, Nora is not super happy with her job. She doesn't really see herself going anywhere. It's kind of the same thing over and over again. She feels more like she is kind of making coffee runs for like the senior editors rather than getting to like read through all the manuscripts and do all the fun stuff that she was hoping that she was gonna get to do. So she comes up with this plan that is a very dumb plan. Not surprisingly, it backfires on her, but I felt like the lead up to the climax, like there's a lot of lead up and then there's no real payoff. Her boss and her have this like confrontational scene. It actually wasn't all that bad for her. Like, I feel like in real life it would have gone a lot worse. So this one was not my favorite. I feel like we needed a little bit of green, so I'm gonna sit my little plant. The next one that I listened to was actually an audiobook. It was Creatures by Chrissy Van Meter. This one was only like a 6-hour audiobook, which is like half the length of the audiobooks that I normally listen to. I found it on Libby for free, so I thought, might as well knock this one out, won't take me very long. Ultimately, it was a little forgettable. Essentially, it follows Evie, the main character, and she lives on Winter Island, which is off the coast of Southern California. So she's about to get married, and it kind of flashes back to times in her childhood that are supposed to sort of inform us about why she's making like the current decisions that she's making in the present. Her mom left to live on the mainland. She was raised by her father, who was essentially like a drug dealer. He was pretty negligent of her and then also trying to protect her. Like, he's definitely not a perfect dad, not gonna win Father of the Year by any means. It felt like a memoir, it felt like autofiction. Those were kind of the vibes that I was getting, and I'm not a huge fan of autofiction. There's supposed to be a metaphor because Evie studies whales and like marine life, marine biology at the Sea Institute, and so there's supposed to be this metaphor with like the tides and like her memories sort of flashing back and her sort of coming into the present and then going back into the past, and there's supposed to be some big metaphor there. Any little relationship or moment that she was going through, she would always relate it to some sort of sea creature, which I thought was interesting, but it was kind of one of those books where you get to the end and you're like, okay, but like, what are you saying? What am I supposed to take away from this? I guess I'm one of those readers who just I need to know what the point was, and I felt like it was just random little vignettes from her past. So ultimately, I think I only gave that one like 3 stars. But next was one that I really liked. This is a 5 stars for sure. I went in just not having many expectations because I've never read a book quite like this before. This is a nonfiction one. It's When God Was a Woman by Marlon Stone. This was incredible. This really opened my eyes. I feel like this is a book that should be required reading in any like religious studies kind of class in college, because this type of book and the things that are presented in here I have never heard before, and it was really interesting to go back and look at all of the evidence that points to when humankind worshipped female deities. I will put the synopsis on the screen. I actually didn't find it too heavy. There are definitely some parts that go into like biblical history and they do get a little intense, but I was able to hang on through those tougher parts because it was just so fascinating. Like, it's not anything that I'd ever heard of before. I feel like most of us have heard of like Isis and Ishtar, but it wasn't something that I grew up hearing a lot about or anything about at all. So it really like shocked me, but in a good way. Super thought-provoking, just all around very interesting read, and kind of a nice break from fiction. Next for December was Outline by Rachel Cusk. I put this one up for sale on eBay recently because I bought the other two, numbers 2 and 3, because this is a trilogy. And I bought them from a different publisher. So this one is now on eBay. I will link books that I have for sale below if you guys are interested, because this one is on there. This was great, loved it. I feel like they are kind of bouncing around on BookTube and Bookstagram. I've seen them before, was really curious, and so I thought I would give them a go, and I really did like it. Cusk writes in a way that's very kind of the reverse, or like the invert of the way that most writers write about their main character. But she is one of those people, kind of like me, who attracts people who just, sometimes they'll stand there and tell you their whole life story because you yourself are not much of a talker, and so they fill that empty space. You get a glimmer, just a tiny little glimmer in the first book of the main character and who she is and what she's all about via the conversations that she has with other people. So we sort of get an outline of her. I thought it was really interesting. It's honestly just, it feels like a rambling conversation, but I loved that about it. Sometimes I feel like the best books and movies, like if you guys have seen, what were they called? Before Sunrise, like that whole trilogy of movies with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, those films are just like a rambling conversation. And the topic changes, and the settings change, but essentially it's them just talking to each other the whole time. And you would think that that would be really boring, but it's actually really fascinating. This kind of reminded me of that because it's just her jumping from person to person, from conversation to conversation. So I did give this one, I think, 5 stars. The last one for December really surprised me because I've never read Didion before. This is Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. Takes place in the 60s, Hollywood. Basically we have a main character who is an actor slash model, I think she's supposed to be. It's written in a really sparing sort of way. I could probably even show you, like there's so much blank space, and I feel like you're supposed to take that as like all the things that the characters aren't saying to each other. Like all the blank space is actually kind of loud in a way, if that makes any sense. But I can see why Didion is so prolific of an author. She really gets to the heart of things. She really kind of cuts to the bone. There were so many sentences in here that I like underlined and commented on and, you know, analyzed. This one was definitely, I mean, there's substance here for sure, but there's also a lot of style. And I really like that kind of lazy, hazy, 60s California, Hollywood, kind of glitz and glamour, but also a lot of grit mixed in there. She's going through some really intense stuff. Definitely do your research on this one. Look up the trigger warnings, because our main character goes through a lot of stuff, but she's ultimately really tough and independent, and I think that's what I liked most about it, was just her, just the main character. So I am definitely going to be prioritizing Didion in 2023. If you guys have a favorite of hers that you've read, let me know what it is so I can put it on my TBR, because I have not done hardly any research at all into what other books that she's written. I know there's Slouching Towards Bethlehem, is that one of them? Which that title is like, wow. I don't even know what that one's about, so that may be the next one that I pick up by her. Hello, it's me again, this time with pigtails. So it got too dark last night, couldn't use like half of the clips that I filmed, but that's okay. So we got through December books. Now we're moving on to January, which I'm excited for because I read some good stuff in January. So let's get into it. I think it's kind of a good thing that I can't use some of those clips because I actually just finished an audiobook this morning, so now I can add it into my January reads. So I read 4. All right, so the first one that I read for January was Eleutheria, I think I'm saying it right, by Allegra Hyde. So this one I've seen at Barnes & Noble a couple different times, and when I went to like up to the checkout, the guy at the register at Barnes & Noble was like, oh, I've been there, and I was like, what? Apparently it's a real island in the Bahamas. I thought it might be like a made-up place, but no, in fact it's a real place. So yes, this is about a main character. Her name is Willa. She considers herself to be an eco-warrior, so she's very much like she wants to be a boots on the ground, like let's turn climate change around kind of person. So she comes across this book one day called Living the Solution. The guy who wrote it, his name is Roy Adams. He's very much like a G.I. Joe kind of character. Anyway, he wrote this book called Living the Solution, and she becomes enamored by it. He started this place called Camp Hope, and it's on the island of Eleutheria, so she makes it there. She has passion, but she doesn't have a lot of... I don't want to say she's like dumb, but she's very naive. She's kind of looking for love in all the wrong people. And so I think that's her biggest downfall. Overall, I really liked her as a character. I think she's pretty like strong, independent. She knows what she wants, but she's just very misguided. This gets a little political. It honestly I felt a little bit pulled away from everything going on at the camp because of the drama, like the relationship drama that's going on in Willa's life. I don't know, it wasn't exactly what I thought it was gonna be, so I ended up only giving it like 3.5 stars. Sorry if you guys can hear, there's like freezing rain hitting the windows. Anyway, so we have a main character who, you know, she's far from perfect, but that's totally fine. But she ends up being a little bit of a hypocrite, and I don't know, we can all be that way, so she's definitely relatable, but it just missed the mark for me a little bit. I will say I did not see the twist coming in this, so that was good. That kind of kept me hanging on there till the end. We can all relate to her because we've all had like the thoughts and the anxieties that she has. So wasn't exactly what I was expecting, so I didn't give it a super high rating, but I enjoyed it overall. Next was another Law of Attraction book, another Teaching of Abraham book. I've been reading these kinds of books for a while now, a couple of years. This is technically a series. Like if you go on Amazon, you do get a lot of these books that come up. I don't believe you have to read them in any particular order. I would say before starting this one, even though it does a good job of describing what the Law of Attraction is in the first chapter, you would probably want to start with the Law of Attraction. That way you have a really solid foundation. This is not like a get rich quick kind of book. It's all about mindset. So if you know anything about the Law of Attraction, you know that it's all about positive thinking. It's all about your attitude and your mindset, and you just have to kind of start with the Law of Attraction and go from there. But this one is specifically about attracting wealth. There was actually only one chapter on like finances, like actual money, which I was kind of surprised. I thought it was going to be like the whole book. It's really not. They also do a deep dive into like wealth, but not necessarily financial wealth. Like, what does it mean for you to feel wealthy? What does it mean for you to feel like you are fulfilled? So there's a lot on happiness and well-being. It goes a lot into this idea of how humans, we like to be collectors of things or collectors of stuff. I don't remember exactly how they word it, but they do straight up say like just collecting a whole bunch of stuff is not going to fill the void. Like you need to find things that make you genuinely happy in order to prosper in life. So I liked that it talked about like physical health, things that are like true wealth and not just financial. I would say these are really important to read if you are somebody who genuinely believes in your heart, like I'm broke and I'm always going to be broke. There's no way for me to get a leg up in life. So if you have a really negative mindset, I would say these books are probably going to change your life if you let them. It's really important to shift all of your negative thoughts about money and start believing that there is enough for you. There's enough for everybody, enough to go around. Any negative thoughts you have is going to keep money away from you. It's going to push financial abundance out of your life. And I really had to confront some things that I've thought about, like billionaires, these people who are like the top 1% of the 1%, and how they must be evil because they don't share enough of it. Like I definitely was confronted with a lot of negative thoughts that I have about money. So doing like the inner work, I think, is the most important thing that you're gonna find out of these books. I feel like that's why they're really kind of irreplaceable in my life, because they really do, they make you think and they make you question everything, but in a good way. Highly recommend all the Law of Attraction books. I find that they're very, very insightful. Okay, next up was my absolute favorite of the month. This was a 5 stars. I knew pretty early on that it was gonna be. It's very entertaining, fast-paced, all the wanderlust kind of travel, armchair travel kind of vibes that I want when it's freezing outside and I can't even go outside to like take the trash out without bundling up like an Eskimo. Anyway, that book is What I Was Doing While You Were Breeding by Kristen Newman. This feels like little vignettes, like it almost feels like little short stories, but it's basically about her travels, all of the international traveling that she was doing in the early 2000s. So she is a sitcom writer. She wrote for shows like That 70s Show. So how TV show writing works in Hollywood, I didn't know this. I think this is really fascinating. You basically work for 9 months, like you write, you work on, you know, like a production set maybe, and then you get 3 months off. So she would save as much as she could during those 9 months and then go travel for 3 months. Which is like the dream, am I right? It basically follows all of the many adventures and many escapades, all of the men that she meets along the way, all the different people, some of them strangers, some of them friends or friends of friends that she meets throughout her travels. It takes a lot for me to laugh at a book. Like I'll like smile and maybe giggle, but there were a couple times I genuinely laughed out loud at this. As a homebody and as an introvert, this was bizarre, but like so entertaining to read because she's very extroverted. She will literally hop on a plane and go to a country she's never been to where she doesn't know anybody and just go out, explore, meet, like bump into people. It's like so not the way that I live. So it was really fascinating, really entertaining. I feel like we all have like a Kristen Newman inside of us. Like we all have that person who wants to just like board a plane, have no idea like where we're going or who we're gonna meet, and just like live life moment to moment. This feels a lot like Eat, Pray, Love. Like it has that same kind of vibe, self-discovery via traveling, like solo female kind of thing, but a lot less serious and a lot less spiritual. This is like the lighthearted, funny, comedic version of Eat, Pray, Love. At the same time, it's deep. There's a lot of heartbreak, so I feel like it has just as much heart as it does humor. And it's been a minute since I've read a book like that, so I did thoroughly enjoy this one. And then finally, we have a book that I did not even open because I listened to the audiobook. This has been on my shelf for a while. It sounds really fascinating and I did like it. Yeah, I knew that I was not gonna like want to pick up something that's a little bit dry. So that's why I found the audiobook for free on Libby. This talks about the difference between introverts and extroverts and all of the ways that is amazing, that we're all really different. And the way that you as an introvert, if you're an introvert like me, can kind of harness your ability to be soft-spoken and more quiet, but how that can actually be kind of a superpower. So the author talks a lot about how the world that we live in really hails people who are extroverts, and how it kind of seems weird when a student is quiet, and how a lot of us when we were younger, if we were quiet kids, if we were more introverted, we would get told by the teacher, like the teacher would tell our parents, like it would be nice if they could speak up more and talk more. And if you're anything like me, you don't really like big groups or big crowds, you don't like the class discussion, you don't like having to find a partner. It was all really nerve-wracking because that's just not where I excelled. So she gives a lot of examples. Sometimes they go on for the entire chapter. Most of the time I was listening to this audiobook on like 1.75 speed just so I could like get to the end of the examples that she was giving, but it's full of studies. There's like a whole index in the back. She did a lot of work. I don't know how many years it took her to come up with this, to write this, but it's very well researched. The thing that she says in the conclusion that I feel like I kind of took away from most is she says, the secret to life is to put yourself in the right lighting. For some, it's a Broadway spotlight. For others, a lamp-lit desk. Use your natural powers of persistence, concentration, insight, and sensitivity to do work you love and work that matters. Figure out what you're meant to contribute to the world and make sure you contribute it. If this requires public speaking or networking or other activities that make you uncomfortable, do them anyway. But accept that they're difficult, get the training you need to make them easier, and reward yourself when you're done. She also talks about how if you're an introvert, you probably have this extrovert like mask that you put on sometimes, and you can almost like fake it till you make it. There are times in life where you really do have to like, you know, you may have to kind of show up as this more exuberant self. She talks about how you're gonna pay for that later in energy. You're probably gonna be really, really tired the next day. You're gonna need some extra time, like some alone time, and that's okay. She talks about how we really shouldn't be shaming our students or our kids, like especially when you're young and you're really sensitive as a child, we shouldn't be shaming them when they spend time alone. Even though I kind of knew all that in my heart, it is kind of cool to see studies back that up and to show a large percentage of the population is quiet, and you just got to find ways that work for you. This one I would probably give at least 4 stars to. It was a little dry. I feel like it could have been a little bit shorter, but overall packed full of really, really good information. All right, guys, that is the end. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. I have some new fun kind of different things happening on my channel really soon, so I will see you in the next video. Bye. Guillermo.